Loran Kenstley Cole, was born in Iowa on November 11, 1966. He had an unhappy childhood full of both physical and emotional abuse, and his parents Dawn and Aunt Cole were addicted to alcohol and substance abuse. Cole was sent to foster care more than once in his childhood, and his mother had gone to prison, and that Cole's father would get violent whenever he became intoxicated with alcohol and would have physical altercations with his wife during arguments. In 1984, when Cole was 17, he went to live at the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys, where he reportedly underwent severe physical and sexual abuse by the staff during his 6-month stay. Regularly, Cole was bitten at least twice a week, and on one occasion, he was raped by a guard, and on another occasion, Cole had both of his legs broken by staff after trying to escape the school. Loran K. Cole's journey to the death chamber began in the Ocala National Forest. There, on February 18, 1994, Edwards and his sister were on a weekend camping trip. On Friday, February 18, 1994, John Edwards met his sister Pam for a weekend camping trip in the Ocala National Forest. While they were setting up camp in the Hopkins Prairie, Loran Cole stopped by, introduced himself as Kevin, and helped them get settled. Later that evening, Cole returned to the Edwards campsite with William Paul, who he introduced as his brother, even though the two men were not related. After sitting around the campfire, the four decided to go for a walk. While walking, Cole attacked Pam, throwing her to the ground, hitting her on the head, and putting her in handcuffs. At the same time, John began to struggle with Paul. John took possession of a walking stick that Paul was carrying, and proceeded to beat him with it. With Pam in handcuffs, Cole helped Paul restrain John and laid him next to his sister on the ground. While Cole and Paul were robbing the siblings, all John could do was apologize to his sister for having put her in such a dangerous situation. Paul moved Pam up the trail, and Cole stayed behind with John, beating him for hurting his brother with a walking stick in the earlier altercation. Soon Cole joined Paul and Pam, and told them they were going to wait until John passed out. Cole then went back to where John lay injured and slit his throat, telling Pam that he was only moving John off the trail and tying him up. John died from a slashed throat and numerous skull fractures. Cole and Paul took Pam back to the campsite where Cole raped her. The next day, Cole claimed he was going to check on John and told Pam that he was all right. Cole then raped Pam again, gagged her, and tied her between two trees. Pam was able to free herself from the ropes on early Sunday morning. Fearing for her brother's safety, she stayed put for a while. However, Pam eventually flagged down a motorist who took her to call police. Cole and Paul were identified from the detailed description Pam gave to police and arrested on February 21, 1994. 3 days later, police arrested Cole and Paul. In 1995, Cole and Paul were convicted of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping and 2 counts of robbery with a deadly weapon. Cole, also convicted of 2 counts of sexual battery, was sentenced to death. Paul pleaded guilty to his felony charges and was sentenced to life. He remains incarcerated in Florida. Over the years, Cole filed more than a dozen appeals in his case. He maintains that he did not kill Edwards and that the murder weapon was found with Paul's possessions and with his fingerprints on it. His defense attorneys contended that Cole's life should be spared because of horrific abuse he suffered out of the notorious Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys, a state-run school run by the state in Marianna, an hour west of Tallahassee. His attorneys also argued lethal injection would cause needless pain and suffering because of Cole's symptoms from Parkinson's disease, which he has had since 2017. and causes his arms and legs to shake. Those sentenced to death in Florida may choose between two execution methods. By default, the inmates are executed by lethal injection, but the condemned can choose death by electrocution. Out of the two, Paul pleaded guilty to the murder, kidnapping and robbery charges, a decision that ultimately spared him the death sentence, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. On the other hand, Cole, who was deemed to have played a bigger role in the murder, was sentenced to death after a state jury found him guilty of murdering Edwards and other charges that include the rape of Edwards's sister. On September 18, 1995, a jury selection commenced before the trial of Loran Cole, which was scheduled to begin in the following week. A motion from Cole's lawyer Don Gleason to hold separate trials for the murder charge and lesser charges of rape, abduction and robbery was denied. Cole's trial began on September 26, 1995. The prosecution had earlier confirmed they would be seeking the death penalty for Cole. On September 29, 1995, a 12-member jury found Cole guilty of all 7 charges, mainly 1 count of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of rape and 2 counts of armed robbery. The day after Cole's conviction, the same jury unanimously recommended that Cole should be given the death penalty for the murder of John Edwards. On December 21, 1995, Circuit Judge William T. Swigert formally sentenced Cole to death for murdering Edwards. Cole was simultaneously sentenced to life in prison for the other offenses he committed. Cole's defense counsel reportedly urged the judge to consider Cole's troubled childhood during sentencing, but Justice Swigert aligned with the stance of the prosecution, who all described Cole as a cold and indifferent killer. Cole was executed by lethal injection on August 29, 2024, at the Florida State Prison in Rayford, Florida. More than an hour before Cole died, dozens of people piled out of a Greyhound bus to protest the execution, the death penalty and pray for Cole's soul. Activists and members of churches across the state came together on the lawn facing the prison's entrance. Cole's lethal injection marked the 7th time Florida executed a man since August 8, 2019. The most recent execution in the Sunshine State took place in October, when the state executed Michael Zack for a woman's 1996 slaying. Cole's death also marked Florida's 106th execution since the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the death penalty in 1976 and executions resumed in the state in 1979. While strapped to his deathbed, an off-white gurney equipped with brown leather bindings, with a paper sheet covering everything up to his neck, Cole was asked by a prison guard if he had any last words. "No, sir," Cole said as he stared up at the ceiling. He briefly craned his neck to scan those in the gallery gathered to watch his final moments, gave a slight nod and laid back down. The first of the 3 drugs were administered through an intravenous drip at 6:03 p.m. The first drug sedated him, the second paralyzed him and the third stopped his heart. At first, Cole's body jerked and trembled while he took deep, labored breaths, then was still. At 6:05, a guard tapped Cole's eyelids and firmly shook his shoulders, saying, "Mr. Cole, Mr. Cole." When he didn't respond, the next injection was administered. He lay with his eyes closed and mouth hanging open. Within 12 minutes, he was dead. At 6:15 p.m., a doctor walked in from behind a curtain to declare him dead. She leaned over his head, checked his pupils, then moved to his neck and chest where she used a stethoscope to listen for a heartbeat. Watching his execution were 19 official witnesses, 4 dock communications staff members and 2 guards. 3 guards stood in the room with Cole. Inmates' family members are not permitted to witness the execution. For his last meal, Cole requested pizza, ice cream, mands and soda. He declined to meet with a spiritual advisor and saw no other visitors in his final hours. Thank you for watching Death Row. Loran